everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and welcome back to the show. Zach Hicks of Colts on SI. Zach, every time there's anything Vikings and Colts related, you are my go-to guy. And do we got anything interesting to talk about leading into this game? I feel like maybe a subject or two for this national television contest in which we will see Sam Darnold v. Joe Flacco. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. I mean, busy week. I mean, I'm jumping on radio shows constantly. Like, I'm the star of the hour right now because everyone wants to hear about this, I guess.
Well, I want to hear about it. I want to hear the up-close perspective because I've shared my own opinions on the handling of Anthony Richardson, who was a prospect that I really liked coming out. But I think you and I did a podcast about it before the draft and Anthony Richardson. And we both said, if you draft him, you have to have a clear-cut plan for him. That plan for the Colts has been, hey, play and be a complete quarterback, even though you're not anywhere close to ready for that. And shocker, it hasn't worked out. So what did you make of the decision to bench him, which is part one, and now what this means and how we got here? All of it. Now, go, talk.
All right. So if you got like 30 minutes blocked off for me just to talk nonstop right here, that's what it's going to be. But, the decision to bench him is this commitment, I guess, to mediocrity. You joked when I jumped on the call here before we started recording, you were like, all right, here comes the 9-8 season or 8-9 season. And that's kind of what it is, man. Like, you and I have covered a lot of teams and covered like from the Vikings, Colts, and other teams, stuff like that, where it comes to that mediocre season. It's so awful. It's so bad. It's the worst thing to cover because there's a little bit of hope that you could squeak into the playoffs and then you end up not making it. Or even if you do make it, you get blown out in the playoffs and it just doesn't matter. But that's kind of what it feels like the Colts are committing to here. They're like, hey, we're 4-4. We're at this crossroads of the season. We're 1-3 in the division, so we're probably not going to win the division. And we got these, 3 really tough games coming up with the Vikings, Lions, and Bills. And we can't, again, there's more behind the scenes and more going on with this. It's not just performance, but I do think performance is a big part of this, where it's like we owe it to our veteran players to win games and try to push to the playoffs. And that's what I guess Joe Flacco is, which we'll get into it on this episode. I don't know if that necessarily makes them that much better overall. It makes them a better passing team for sure, but I don't know if it makes them that much better overall. But yeah, it's just this commitment to winning now when it's like, why are you taking the 21-year-old super raw quarterback 4th overall that needed a lot of time and a lot of reps? Like, why are you taking him that high if you're going to bail after 10 starts and say, we need to win now? It's a frustrating situation. The handling of this whole situation, I thought, was on a good pace to start last year. Like, if you look at how Richardson started a lot of those games, like good QB run stuff, they had really quick, short RPO game that was going really well with Richardson. And yeah, there were a lot of rawness to his game, but you could see the flashes and the ability and the good things. This year, it's like they came out being like, we need to push it vertical with him. We need to have him just in the gun doing play action, deep shots every single snap. They did a little bit of the QB run stuff, but he got hurt again, and they pulled back on that a little bit. And it's been like, hey, be like a real quarterback for us now that you're in year 2, which I'm not saying is a too much of an expectation because, look, he's an NFL quarterback. You do eventually need him to take that jump, but after seeing the regression for 4 straight starts, instead of benching him, maybe pull it back a little bit. Pull it back to the RPO. Pull it back to the QB run game. Lean on, Jonathan Taylor's averaging near 5 yards a carry with Richardson this year. Lean on Jonathan Taylor a little bit more, whatever it needs to be, rather than benching him. But they ultimately decide just to go to a different quarterback. So the handling of this, I don't think has been perfect, especially, we have players saying they found out on social media and players saying they found out through other players. I was literally interviewing a player 2 hours after the news broke, and he was at a charity event, and we generally talked about it. You know how that situation can be a little delicate, but we generally talked about it, and he was like, what? I didn't even hear about it. You're the first guy who's told me that, and which is wild to me. 2 hours, you didn't even have a semblance that could happen. It's been handled so weird by the Colts and just not in a good way whatsoever. You never like to be, when you're a small market team, you don't like to be the talk of the town, for something like this. And that's what we are right now across the entire league. So yeah, man, I don't think they've handled it perfectly. I don't think it was at the point where it should have been handled like this. to where it feels very abrupt and very sudden, and we need to just refocus to winning now. But here we are, man. Here we are. This is where we're at.
So with Anthony Richardson, then what does the future look like for him? Because if you go through the ages of some of the other young quarterbacks in the NFL, Bo Nix is 2 years older than him. Jaden Daniels is 2 years older than him. Michael Penix has barely played for the Atlanta Falcons as a top draft pick. He's several years older than Anthony Richardson. I believe he's the same age as Shedeur Sanders, who will not play in the NFL until next season. And if you think about where Jaden Daniels was at the same age, or even the Josh Allen comparison has to be made when there was the graphic that everybody shared with the first 10 starts, the stats in the first 10 starts. Now, where I would agree with the Colts in benching him is that last week it looked like Tim Tebow that just could not complete passes. And that goes beyond just having a tough time throwing the football. That's to, you should win that game if you can even reasonably throw the ball to anybody. So what happened there? And do you think that it is fixable?
Yeah, I mean, going back to last week, I think if it's just a 1 week thing like that, you can kind of excuse it. Because I mean, Houston this year, I think at home, I think I saw someone sharing stats, whatever. They're like allowing like a 51% completion percentage at home this year. Like they are killing teams at home. Now, I know you guys don't know that because when they went out to you guys this year, you guys just obliterated them. But I swear, Houston's a good team. I promise you guys that. I know you guys don't think that, but Houston's a pretty good team, especially at home this year when it comes to defense. They have a lot of pass breakups at home and they keep it low. But because it's been a month of this from Richardson where the completion percentage is just plummeting. He's struggling to complete a lot of passes. And even though, like, yes, the Colts are calling a vertical passing offense quite a bit, there are some short things mixed in where he's ignoring them and going deep. I mean, one of his best throws this past week was to A.D. Mitchell in the corner of the end zone where Mitchell couldn't get his second foot down. You watch it from the all-22, it's a mesh call. And Mitchell was like the vertical clear out. Now, it's a fantastic throw to get it out to Mitchell, but like, we got mesh coming on here. Like, let's get it to the underneath mesh here and let the guy run after the catch. So I think it's things like that too. Like it does fall on Richardson. And by no means when you like criticize this benching, are you saying that Richardson's playing well? Like Richardson has not been playing well this year, and it needed to get better. As for his future with Indy, like, or just his future in general, like I don't think this book closes on him as an NFL starter or an NFL quarterback at all. Like we're actually seeing this resurgence of quarterbacks in the NFL. You guys are a great example. I mean, look at your team this year, one of the best teams in football, led by Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, one of the biggest busts in the last 10 years, coming out and playing really well. Geno Smith up in Seattle doing some really good things up there. I mean, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, whatever they're combining to do up there in Pittsburgh. Like, I'm not saying Russell Wilson's a bust, but, Russell Wilson coming off of a bad couple years here. So, yeah, it's like, it's not over for him if it doesn't work in Indy or if it's over it's a benching right now. He just needs to grow from this and learn from this and become a Sam Darnold and not a Mitch Trubisky, where you just kind of keep going downhill after the benching and maybe a backup at best. But yeah, it might be over in Indy. You rarely see guys turn it around at the same spot when they get benched. Usually if it clicks again for them at all, it's in their second destination. But again, this is a 22-year-old quarterback. Has a lot of growing to do in terms of on the field and even off the field. Like, this isn't to say he's a bad kid or anything, but he is a kid. Like, he's 22 years old. Like, to be the face of a franchise, to say all the right things and do all the right things. I mean, with the thing that people were talking about this past week, the tap out, on that one play, that's a sign of a bit of immaturity, and it's not to say like immaturity red flag. It's an immaturity like maybe not ready to be the starting NFL quarterback immaturity. So I don't know where the trust will ever be with the Colts and him again, if he'll start next year and be the guy in Indy again next year. But I'm not fully out on this kid being an NFL quarterback. Like, he's clearly shown some ability that nobody else has. He's shown some potential, and he just needs to grow a little bit. And maybe it would have been better if he stayed in college to grow, but who knows? Like, I was always of the opinion that, you can maybe grow a little bit with more attention from the NFL staff, but again, the NFL is a not for long if you're struggling. So maybe it would have been better in college where they give you a little bit more time to get through it. Where in the NFL, it's like, even as a 21-year-old super raw quarterback that struggled in college, we're only going to give you 10 starts and then you're done. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think the book's closed on Richardson as an NFL quarterback, though. I really think he can turn this around at some point in his career. I just don't know if this is going to work in Indy.
Hang on. Let me silence my phone real quick so I can tell you that Us Days at US Cellular is back again. Exclusive offers just for customers, just to say thanks. Right now, you'll get $1,200 off any phone plus $400 off any tablet. Amazing, right? But my family is so excited about their new devices, they keep texting me during the show. They're all about Us Days deals like $1,200 off any phone, $400 off any tablet. Terms apply. Visit uscellular.com for details. I just think that when you draft that guy, you have to have a plan and stick to the plan. And
Right.
especially when you're bringing in a new coach. And it's not like that's the coach who's been there who's trying to save his job, like the Matt Nagy and Justin Fields thing, where, okay, let's try to have a baby to keep the marriage together or whatever and draft a quarterback to try to save jobs and extend how long you're there. This was a reset of the franchise. And you have Gardner Minshew, who is a proven starting NFL quarterback, can get you to a 500 record. There really wasn't any pressure to put him in right away. And one of the underrated factors about a development quarterback and letting him develop over a year without playing him is that he stays healthy. And he doesn't rack up injuries because he doesn't know how to protect himself at the beginning of that. And not every quarterback has to come into the league. And we saw it from CJ Stroud and sit for a year. I don't think that it's an across the board, but Stroud was so much of a different player. He was such a great thrower of the ball. He had played at Ohio State. I mean, that's a system that gives you a lot of the mesh concepts and things like that you're talking about, going through reads, throwing with timing. And he did that all and then brings that to the NFL. With someone like Richardson, I think the running kind of quarterback with the huge arm does have to develop, and they had the situation to do it and basically just refused to do it because he was exciting. And I think that really hurt his progress. Now, from our standpoint, as interesting as this is for me, because I've been sort of fascinated by Richardson, the Vikings are playing the Colts. Joe Flacco is the quarterback. What should we expect to see from a Joe Flacco that looked like his career was over a couple of years ago and now is a reasonably good NFL starter again?
So it's actually hilarious too, because there's nothing metric wise that says Joe Flacco should sustainably be where he's at right now with the Colts. But here's the thing I've learned covering football for a lot of my adult life here. There are some things that are just unexplainable, like just completely unexplainable. There's some voodoo magic in the football gods pick their favorites. And right now it might be Joe Flacco, because if you look at him metric wise, it is one of the most hilarious analytics profiles right now, where EPA per play on first and second down, he's like a below average quarterback this season. EPA per play on first through third quarter, below average quarterback. On third downs, though, by far and away the best quarterback in the league this season. And this is not because the Colts are getting into like 3rd and 2. The Colts are averaging like 7.5 yards to go on third downs with Joe Flacco this year. Best quarterback in football on third downs. They are completing it it's like a 47% third down conversion rate with him. He's just delivering perfect passes on third downs this year. And then you go to the fourth quarter. Who's the best quarterback in football by far and away this year in the fourth quarter? Joe Flacco. Not even close. So I like, if you're a Vikings fan, you're looking at this, you're like, it's bound to regress eventually. There's no way that he stays at this level in the fourth quarter and third down. And if he regresses to where he's at on first and second down and first through third quarters, then he's just a below average quarterback that you're facing. But again, if he stays on this heater that he's at on third downs, he's tricky, man. He's tricky. Even in the Titans game where he struggled, when the Colts needed a first down late in the game, he was delivering passes and he was getting the Colts moving. So, Flacco, I don't think overall changes too much of the Colts offense, because really when you're inserting Flacco, you're substituting run down efficiency for passing down efficiency. With Richardson out there, the Colts rush success rate was like a 43%. And then with Flacco out there, it's been like a 26%. Like, they cannot run the ball with Joe Flacco because so much of their run game is built around the +1 QB and the QB run game. So when you take that element out, even with Jonathan Taylor out there, it's just not very effective running the ball. But what you get is like a 65% pass rate. You get more efficiency in the passing game. And again, you get this guy who just balls out on third down. So really, if you're a Vikings fan, I know this is a horrifying thing to say to a Vikings fan, because you guys have been on the bad end of so many crazy things in NFL history. You guys should be fine against Flacco as long as he's not working with his like black magic thing that he's working with right now on third downs. Now, again, that's everything's cursed for you guys. So I don't know if I know anything about this Colts team. I'll just say this jokingly here, but if I know anything about this Colts team, when everyone's laughing at them in the national media for a whole week, they almost certainly win. Like it's just what they do, and then they lose every game after that. But they'll win. Like they won the first Jeff Saturday game in 2022. And then they lost every single game after that. So I don't know. Like, again, if Joe Flacco keeps up this crazy heater he's on third downs, though, he is a tough quarterback to beat because, like, he's delivering these passes, very, very difficult passes and, like, a really high level. It's just, it's bound to regress eventually. There's no way he keeps this up. Like, a 39-year-old quarterback being the best in football by, like, a wide margin on third downs and fourth quarters, like, that's just not sustainable. But again, man, football is a crazy sport. You never know what actually is sustainable. You say this is bound to regress, and then it never does. And then you're looking after the season being like, wow, okay, there you go, Flacco. Stay on your heater, I guess.
Right. Maybe over 20 games it would regress, but that doesn't mean it's definitely going to regress this week. I think the thing that Vikings fans are most concerned with is they felt like two veteran quarterbacks were able to execute a very specific blueprint against this defense and have success in Goff and Stafford. And they were looking forward to Anthony Richardson coming here and having no idea what he was looking at, which has usually been the case for young quarterbacks against Brian Flores. And even CJ Stroud totally lost in the US Bank Stadium noise. It is one of the loudest places in the entire NFL. It's not quite Seattle, but it's in that ballpark of being one of the loudest right there with the Superdome. And Stroud couldn't get people lined up. They couldn't communicate. And you could just envision 4 interceptions from Anthony Richardson because he didn't know where to go with the ball. Flacco will get the ball out quick. He can read defenses. He's not going to be shocked, especially a guy who played in the AFC North for so long, by mugging up the A gaps and things like that. He knows what to do against all of that stuff. And we've seen a lot of kind of easy passes from Stafford and Goff that weren't like, oh, wow, Matt Stafford has the best arm ever. It's like, no, that was actually just a little slant and or a little bubble screen or something to get the ball out quickly and into the playmaker's hands. So that's my question is, can Flacco on first and second down, can he get it out of his hands quick? And how do you evaluate what this unit is for playmakers when Richardson has not been able to get anybody the ball? Because I look at this group of wide receivers and say, it's pretty good. It shouldn't be a terrifying, is it going to be one of those Mo Alley Cox games? Didn't he have a huge game against the Vikings in 2020? I think he did. But I feel like this group of receivers and Jonathan Taylor should be a lot to handle for the Vikings defense if someone can get them the football.
Yeah, I do think, especially Josh Downs, I think is the guy to really watch in this game. Like if you're bringing a lot of blitzes, Downs is the Colts quick win guy. You know, he is that guy where they'll line him up in isolation routes against safeties and linebackers, and he'll run whip routes, he'll run option routes, he'll run quick slants. And it's like the juiced up version of like a Cole Beasley type of player, you know, like I don't want to go Wes Welker level, but like that kind of player where it's like the ability to win everything and catch everything, you know, like he's always open and then he always catches the ball. He just needs a quarterback who can get the ball to him and accurately read when he's open. And Flacco and him had a great connect, and I actually have the stats right here. And in Flacco's snaps this year, Downs has 23 catches, and that's in a little over 2 games. With Richardson this year, Downs has just 9 catches. Now, the yardage is kind of similar because, again, with Richardson, you get every play is like 70 yards. But with Flacco, it's a lot more of that short stuff. So, again, I think you made a great point where it's like Flacco played against like Pittsburgh for all those years where they're bringing fire zone blitzes every single snap. You know, like that was Flores. A lot of what Flores does with his sim pressures and his pressures and stuff is kind of built off of those fire zone blitzes from the Pittsburgh Steelers past. So Flacco, like, yes, you'll be able to confuse him a little bit, but like he is used to that kind of stuff. So he'll be able to find the hot reads and get the ball out quick. But yeah, no, I think he's got more just comfortability with those kind of things, the fire zone blitzes and kind of seeing those things that Flores likes to do. So he'll be better, certainly, than Richardson would have been in this one. Maybe the Colts were saving Richardson just from this embarrassment that probably was going to happen in this one. But yeah, I think he's more suited for this environment. Now, can he escape sacks if he does get fooled by the Vikings? No, he's not going to be able to escape any sacks. He can't move. He moves like me out there. It's just not going to be very good in the backfield. But I do think if the Colts are able to give him a little bit of time and, again, just work Josh Downs in those isolation routes, I do think the Colts are going to be able to move the ball a little bit in the passing game. And you mentioned Mo Alley-Cox. Mo Alley-Cox, one catch with Richardson. All of his other catches have come with Flacco this year, including his only touchdown this season. So that's a good shout out right there at Mo Alley-Cox. I think that's one of Flacco's guys in this offense.
Never forget the players that light up the Minnesota Vikings. I'm interested in the offensive line of the Colts and where it stands right now, because we saw the Lions really handle the blitzes as an offensive line and their pass protections. They would keep in a tight end sometimes and have the running back leak out. That was problematic for the Vikings, but especially on the ground game, it was not a hard day for Jahmyr Gibbs, who destroyed them. And then Kyron Williams was really good for the Rams last week, even though his offensive line was a bit banged up. They are now playing one of the best running backs in the NFL. And if you all remember, in the comeback game for the Vikings against the Colts, Jonathan Taylor got hurt early in that game. Had he not, I don't think there's any way that the Colts are blowing that game. So where do they stand as an offensive line? Because there is some concern there with the way the Vikings have been handling the run the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mixed bag with this Colts offensive line, where pass block, especially one-on-one pass blocking, they've been one of the best units in football this year. Quentin Nelson, first team All-Pro this season, like easily. Like, he's been fantastic. Bernhard Raimann at left tackle, he's been really good, except for this past week against Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr., which anyone I think struggles with those guys. And then Braden Smith on the other side has been really good. Ryan Kelly up and down, but still a veteran starter at center. And then unfortunately, they lost their right guard for the season a couple weeks ago, who was playing at a Pro Bowl level, Will Fries. He got knocked out for the year, so they're starting undrafted rookie Dalton Tucker out of Marshall. I believe it was out of Marshall is where he was out of. And he's been fine, but again, that's definitely the weak spot that you want to attack if you're, a Vikings defensive staff. But overall, I think they've been fine at picking up blitzes. Now, Richardson had issues identifying blitzes pre-snap, and it really did muddy a lot of like free rushers coming, Colts not getting hot. That could be an issue with the offense too, just not getting hot on blitzes, which going against the Vikings, you got to know how to get hot against blitzes. But I do think Mo Alley-Cox, is a good pass catcher, but also he's their sixth offensive lineman that they keep in there to block a lot. So they'll have ways to kind of combat that. And again, keep everybody in, max protect, isolate Josh Downs. I think that'll be a big thing that the Colts will try to do. When it comes to the run game, though, this Colts offensive line is fantastic in run blocking. Like, a really, really strong unit. They like to get Quentin Nelson on the move quite a bit, get him out in space. It's just, again, the big issue is this whole running game is built around the +1 QB game. It's built around Anthony Richardson being a threat and then using the light boxes for Taylor to be patient and exploit. I mean, Taylor this year, I think, is by far and away the best running back in the league at or it's kind of a whole offense thing, but having yards before contact. And Taylor's a big part of that because he's so patient. It's very Le'Veon Bell-like, and you guys will see it this weekend. But it's also because the Colts have that threat of Richardson pulling it. Guys are going two different ways, and Taylor's 4 yards down the field before he gets touched. Now with Joe Flacco back there, and you stack the box a little bit more, you're not scared of Joe Flacco pulling it. Or if you are, I mean, good on you, I guess. You got to be terrified of those legs of Joe Flacco. But they'll do a lot of just inside zone out of the gun. They'll do a lot of split zone out of the gun. Maybe an occasional power run in there, but it's a very generic run game without Anthony Richardson in there. It's just about if you can stop that simplicity. So you're going to see the same run over and over again. It's just, can you get around Quentin Nelson and tackle Jonathan Taylor? We've seen this year when teams have played against the non-Richardson Colts, they have been able to do that, but it's still a test ultimately because Taylor and Nelson and Raimann and all these guys are very, very good football players.
I think the status of Blake Cashman is going to be huge here. If the Vikings don't have him, they are a different run defense. They're a different defense overall, but they are definitely a different run defense when they're playing Josh Metellus or Kamu Grugier-Hill, who are lighter guys. They're nowhere close to as good of a run defender as Blake Cashman, who routinely grades by PFF as one of the 10 or 12 best run defenders in the league. And you can see it from his size and quickness and so forth. Also, you keep making fun of Flacco's speed. I saw him run one time this year, and he got up to like 17 miles an hour. I promise you and I cannot get up to 17 miles an hour.
That's true.
If I do 10 on the treadmill, I'm huffing and puffing. So it's still pro athletes remain pro athletes. On the defensive side, what's going on with DeForest Buckner? Is he still killing people?
Yeah, so the
That's
Colts
a
did not have,
problem.
they did not
If he
have
is.
DeForest Buckner for most of the season. Like, he got hurt halfway through the first Texans game, played the next week against the Packers, and left early in that game. Got placed on IR, came back this past week, and all of a sudden this Colts defensive line that was anemic before that, I mean, they pressured Stroud on like 60% of his dropbacks. And you kind of saw where it's like, you could kind of see it early in the season when Buckner was out. It's like, hey, Latu, Kwity Paye, and even Dio Dangbo on the edge, they're winning their rushes. It's just quarterbacks are stepping up and scrambling because the guys rushing up in the middle are Grover Stewart, who I love as a run defender. He's just not a great pass rusher. And Taven Bryan, who has been he's been a surprise, but a surprise for Taven Bryan is like being a below average backup. Like, we're happy with that, but like, it's different than DeForest Buckner. So they got Buckner back this past week. They put Dio back more on the inside rushing, and it just became this onslaught of CJ Stroud. Now, again, that offensive line for the Texans is not very good, and you guys saw that firsthand when you played them. It's like if you throw a lot of sim blitzes and just blitzes in general at them, you can really cause them havoc in there. But I do think this Colts pass rush is so much better just with Buckner out there. I know that's such an easy thing to say because Buckner is a very great, very, very good player, but just having a guy to where quarterbacks struggle to step up against, because like, even if he's not winning his rush, it's like, if I step up, DeForest Buckner's there, like, he's going to be the 6'8" dude with vines for arms is going to grab me somehow, and it kind of, it's in the back of your mind. And I know Darnold's been holding on to the ball a little bit longer than most quarterbacks this year, kind of like Richardson, like they're both above the 3-second mark this season. And when you have a guy like Buckner, who, again, is pushing that pocket back, it makes a lot of your scrambles from step ups and outs, and where you can run and find easy lanes, to out the back of the pocket, which every time I see a quarterback turn their back and run outside the back of the pocket, I get terrified. that's where I just lose all confidence in the play. So yeah, dude, getting Buckner back has been massive for this defense. The Colts actually have a pretty good defense in terms of defensive line play now with Buckner back. And outside corner play has actually been pretty solid this year. More of their issues have been linebacker and safety. So if you want to attack anywhere, it's the middle of the field. But trying to run on this team now, especially with Buckner back, and then throwing outside the numbers might be a little difficult. But again, you guys are a Shanahan tree sort of type offense. Attack over the middle with play action, you might be pretty good in that department.
Well, and Kevin O'Connell was really emphasizing when we talked to him yesterday, getting the ball out quickly, and that's going to have to be the case. We don't know yet if Dalton Reisner is coming off the bench to play right guard. If he's not, this is a humongous, enormous, giganto mismatch with DeForest Buckner. Not quite as much as it was with Drew Samia, who he picked up and threw in 2020, and the internet took notice of that, and Samia, I don't think, ever recovered from what DeForest Buckner did. Think about in 2019, the Vikings played against the 49ers in the playoffs. DeForest Buckner ruined them, completely one-handedly eliminated their run game and won the playoff game. And then by week 2 of 2020, DeForest Buckner is throwing their guard through the air and ruining an entire game plan in 2020. So they've been thrilled to not see him since, except for the comeback game there. But he is such a force, one of those force multiplier type of players. And the guys that we talk about, the Vikings have not had as an interior defender for so long, but that's why people pay them so much. That's why they usually don't get let go by teams. And if you can get one, you need to spend a lot of money on it, because he could have an enormous impact on this. But I do think the Vikings game plan will be built on underneath stuff. They need to get Jordan Addison the football. Jefferson's been going underneath a little bit more the last 2 weeks. So I think that is a pretty big factor. Do you have any questions for me about this matchup?
Man, I would love to have so many questions for you, but I'm so like, it's all about
Head
Joe
spinning
Flacco
this week, right?
I know, man. Like, I will say this. And I don't know if you guys have all felt this, so I don't know if I'm talking to people who understand my plight here, but when the young quarterback's out there that you actually have to care about, your heart's racing every time he throws the ball. You're like, oh gosh, like, hey, you have to be good. Like, because you could be the difference between like actually covering a good team or not, or cheering for a good team. When the quarterback's 39 throwing the ball back there, I'm so relaxed. It's like a Xanax for me. Like, I'm just I'm just slumped on the couch, like, oh, cool, Flacco threw a pick, whatever. Like, Flacco threw a touchdown, whatever. So it's kind of relaxing, but also like, oh, man. But I guess the big thing I wanted to ask is like with this Vikings defense, man, I know they've been a revelation this year because of what Flores is doing with the blitzes and all these other things. But like, do you guys have like any like standout individual players? Because I never feel like I hear like I know you guys have Stephon Gilmore. I know Gilmore is doing his thing still. We love Gilmore here in Indy. He was doing his thing for us in 2022. But like when I hear Vikings defense, I feel like I don't individually hear like this superstar defender is doing something. It's more of this unit's really good, which credit to Brian Flores, but like also like, is there that I don't want to say like that Buckner level player on defense, but like that kind of game wrecker on that defense for you guys?
Yeah. So there is a lot of B plusness to this. I actually think it is Cashman, and not having him the last 2 weeks has collapsed the defense. And that's been, I think, of all the factors, the blueprint, the good coordinators, the good quarterbacks, the weapons that they faced, it's that they just don't have the head of the snake. And he's been the one who's doing all the checks at the line of scrimmage. And what they're supposed to do is get up to the line of scrimmage, read what the offense is looking like. Then Cashman makes all the adjustments, who's blitzing, the alignment, all that. It's just not the same with Ivan Pace doing it as it is with Cashman. So whether
Right.
he plays is a massive factor. I would also throw out Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard. Van Ginkel is a difference maker in so many ways. He has more coverage snaps by, I think, 50 than any other edge rusher in the league. He's very good at coverage. He's got 2 pick sixes so far this year. He can rush the passer. He's really great at starting outside, cutting back inside because he's got flexibility. And then Grenard is third in the league in pressures. And one-on-one, it's very hard to stop Jonathan Grenard's quickness, as you probably saw from last year. But I think he's even
Right.
elevated his game from last year in terms of his pass rush win rate, his pressures. And that's something that offenses have maybe negated a little bit more over the last 2 weeks, even though he's had good games. But you've seen the attention going to him, trying to run at him a little more to wear him down, putting a tight end over there. Because if he gets a one-on-one opportunity, he's often winning it. Those guys have played at superstar levels, but nobody really else has. I think Harrison Phillips has been okay. Gilmore, as you mentioned, played really well to start the season. Then teams started to take advantage of him and try to make him tackle, which
Yep.
has been one of the blueprint answers to this Vikings defense. And they've got to figure out how to deal with that, because if you throw bubble screens to the outside at Gilmore and say, come get me, come make a tackle, he's getting pushed down the field by the opposing wide receiver a little bit, especially since he's been worn down. He's playing like every snap, which is something that I didn't think he was going to do when he got here. So it is really those 3 guys that have made it up. And it's the overall intelligence of the thing that has made them exceptional, because
Yeah.
Flores can push any button, anytime, anyone can blitz, anyone can drop back, any alignment. And when teams have run tempo, though, and I'm curious to see if Indianapolis does, it's harder to do all that. And then it becomes more of a one-on-one game. And I think that's what McVay and Ben Johnson figured out is if we make this a one-on-one game, they don't have DeForest Buckner. They have a lot of really good players. And outside, I would say Grenard has played probably the most like a superstar in terms of his edge rushing. But aside from that, let's make them prove that they have dudes. And if Cashman's not out there, which he may not be for this game, it's just a lot tougher. And let me say real quick that I so relate to the feeling you're talking about with Flacco. I wouldn't use the word relaxed watching Kirk Cousins the last few years, but it was more like when they win a close game against Chicago or Arizona, you go, okay.
Yeah.
And they lose a big game on national TV to a contending team. You go, okay, that's kind of who they are. And it's not going to change until it does. And so this year has been a total breath of fresh air talking about the team, because it's just different. And we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where Sam Darnold's going to go from here. And it's already been a bit of a roller coaster, but I totally understand the feeling of that stuck in the mud. That's where the franchise is. And it's just really hard to escape.
Yeah, and we're right back in it. We were there from 2019 to 2022. Look, we had some fun times in there. We had Uncle Phil in there, Phil Rivers, like he was great. But like, yeah, that's where we were as a franchise. Now we're right back in it. One more thing I did want to ask you though, because you did mention about the offensive line, Christian Darrisaw going down this past week. Fantastic player. Is their new player they trade for Cam Robinson? Is he going to start this week, or have you guys not been told yet, like what the direction is going to be?
Not clear. I'm guessing that he'll be questionable going into the game. He only arrived on Wednesday. I guess those flights, well, I've realized since the Vikings play Jacksonville, those flights to Jacksonville, not the easiest. So I guess that must have been a bit of the holdup, or maybe they have to make it official before the guy can show up for his physical and all that. So he's practicing. We're recording Thursday. He's practicing today and Friday, but Friday, as you know, is not an intense practice for teams.
Yep.
It might be tricky. I also think you lose some value in your trade if he doesn't play this week. And then you have to use David Quessenberry, who's bounced around, is 34 years old. I assume that's going to be their answer, that they're not going to move anybody else. But I think that they would prefer to be able to play him. It is kind of a tough ask. It's also probably the easiest position to show up and play outside of edge rusher, because it's just a one-on-one type of battle. So I think that's possible.
Yeah, because I mean, look, again, I know the Colts pass rush has not been great statistically this year, but like now with Buckner back and the week they're coming off of against the Texans, like even when they were rushing 4, they were getting a ton of pressure. I think that defensive line for the Colts could be pretty hectic this week for the Vikings. And I know Justin Jefferson's impossible to cover, so like you guys will still get yours, but like when it comes to that defensive line versus offensive line, it might be a big advantage for the Colts in this one. It might turn this game into a more ugly showing for both teams than what we want. But look, the Colts have that Steelers aspect to them. They bring you down to their level and they make you look ugly with them. It's kind of what the Colts have been doing this year as well.
I think that all Vikings fans believe they should win this game, but also are very afraid of this game, because if you lose it and it's 3 in a row, then it doesn't look so much like you're a contending team anymore after just being 5-0.
Right.
Before we wrap up though, Zach, one more thing for you. This show is presented by Underdog Fantasy. Okay. And they have been great to us. The easiest place to play fantasy sports, fastest growing fantasy app out there. You could sign up with the code PURPLE to claim your special pick and first time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Must be 18 or older. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. And what I want to ask you is your opinion on some pick'ems. Okay. So I'll give you Joe Flacco, Jonathan Taylor, and Sam Darnold. Give me a higher or lower on these numbers.
Okay.
Joe Flacco, higher or lower, 228.5 yards. Would you go higher or lower on Flacco? It's a good number for him.
That's a good number. I think I'll go slightly higher because I think the Colts defense will be a little bit leaky in terms of allowing points. So Flacco will have to score a little bit more to keep up. So I'll go like a little bit higher than that one there.
Okay. I think I would also go higher there as well. Jonathan Taylor, 71.5 rushing yards, higher or lower.
Oh, that's such a tricky dude. Underdog's good, man. They're good.
They are. They're good at what they do.
That makes you look at it and go like, oh yeah, Jonathan Taylor definitely above that. But again, this Colts rush offense has been dreadful when Flacco's been out there. I'll go lower on this one. I think
interesting.
I think the run offense for the Colts has been really bad with Flacco out there, and I don't know if they have enough of a turnaround to all of a sudden become this under center like rushing offense to change it.
I'm a little concerned about the Vikings run defense. I might go higher on Jonathan Taylor. Sam Darnold, will the Colts allow Sam Darnold to throw for higher or lower 254.5 yards? Will they give up more than 254.5?
Fascinating, because the Colts either allow 300 or like 100 in the passing game this year. So I'll go higher on this one because it really just takes a couple big plays. Like we saw, I mean, last week it felt like the Colts defense had Stroud like bottled up and doing nothing. And you look at the stats afterwards, and it was 285 yards passing.
Yeah,
I think it'll be like a similar game like that. It'll be like an ugly 280 or something, or an ugly like 300, but it's still like 280, 300 from Darnold at the end of the day.
Okay, I appreciate that. And Underdog Fantasy, again, that promo code PURPLE helps the show if you use that when you sign up. Who do you think wins, Zach?
Again, man, I've gone against the Colts all year, and I'm doing really good against the Colts in a lot of these. But like, I know how goofy this team is following stuff like this, and I know how the Vikings are always on the bad end of stuff like this too. like, except for your guys' big comeback against us. That was the one time the Vikings had the good thing in the news. So I'm going to go Colts in this one just because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But I'm going Colts. Like, it just I picked against them all year, but it totally makes no sense / makes a ton of sense for the Colts to somehow win this one.
It also makes a ton of sense for the Vikings to start 5-0 and then have things just crumbling down for them. I'll probably go with the Vikings because they're coming off the mini bye and they've had an opportunity to resolve some of their problems.
Right.
But there's still enough holes in this thing. It's you know what? It's a week-to-week league, Zach. So you just never really know. I don't know if you've heard that before.
Oh, yeah.
Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter / whatever you want to call it. And it is the Colts on SI where you do your good work. And also Locked On Colts podcast if you want to check out what Zach is saying about this week. So this is great, man. I love getting together with you. It's always weird. There has never been a time we've gotten together for a podcast where we're like, oh, it's just a normal football game, and that'll be what happens.
It's usually weird on my end, though. We had Jeff Saturday last time, and this time I got Joe Flacco. Like, next time we talk, let's be a weird on your guys' end. Maybe like good weird, but like still weird, you know? Let's do that.
I think that's possible here. Very possible. Thanks, Zach.